In December 1958, a young man named John Unitas led a young team called the Baltimore Colts into the first sudden death overtime in professional football history. In a game which has since then been known as the greatest ever played, young Unitas drove the Colts to the powerful New York Giants 80 yards in 13 carefully selected plays. As the nation watched and tingled with excitement, a fullback named Alan Amici burst one final yard, and the Baltimore Colts had won their first world championship. Through the booming era of television, the legend grew as John Unitas threw more passes for more miles and more touchdowns than anyone else in football history. And in the process, the Baltimore Colts built the best record in pro football. But a decade of glory was concluded with a day of defeat, a day which will always exist in the memories of those who were witnesses.
The game is over. The New York Jets are the world champions. They have upset the Baltimore Colts and beat them handily here today. Beating the Baltimore Colts 16-7 gives the AFL the first Super Bowl championship. They said it would be years before they play a close game, and they almost shut out the Colts today.
Since that black day in Miami, the Baltimore Colts have had but one goal: to become once again the world champion Baltimore Colts. The march to Miami began in San Diego with some familiar faces in unfamiliar places. 11-year assistant Don McCafferty was starting his first season as head coach. 15-year quarterback John Unitas was starting his first game in the AFC. And 10-year halfback Tom Matty was striving to repeat as the league leader in combined rushing and receiving yardage. But Matty was injured, and one familiar face was lost for the season. The Baltimore defense, with Mike Curtis now established in the middle and a rededicated Bubba Smith crashing from outside, dominated quarterback John Hadle and the San Diego offense. Since Super Bowl III, the Colts had become a young team again, averaging only 25 years of age. The top runner was suddenly a rookie, a 215-pound Texas bull named Norm Bulash. From the Pittsburgh Steelers came the flash and dash of number 87, outside man Roy Jefferson. In field goal situations, another new man was called upon, rookie Jim O'Brien. In his first game, trailing by 1 point with less than a minute to play, O'Brien was to field just a sampling of things to come. O'Brien's field goal beat the Chargers 16-14, and then came the reunion the Colts had awaited for almost 2 years. 62 times Broadway Joe Namath gunned the ball into the Colt defense. 40 were caught, but 6 of these were by the guys in the white shirts, 3 by number 20, Jerry Logan. The Colts' 29-22 victory not only gained a measure of revenge for their only previous meeting, but also left the title hopes of the New York Jets crumpled in the dust of the Shea Stadium infield. Back home the next week, the Colts turned their wrath to another guy named Joe. The last time they faced him, Joe Cap threw for 7 touchdowns. This time, Cap himself was touched down 7 times. All the touchdowns were handled by the master himself. One to the rookie runner from Williams, Jack Maitland. one to 13-year veteran Jimmy Orr, and one to the man who is currently the principal tenant of Orrsville, Roy Jefferson. The Colts romped past Boston 27-3 and prepared to welcome former coach Don Shula and his fast-rising Miami Dolphins for the kind of match no one wanted to miss. In the first quarter, Ron Gardine got a flying start, took a punt on the dead run, and flashed 80 yards to complete the longest punt return of the pro season. Not to be outdone, Jim Duncan returned to kickoff 99 yards, the longest play of the AFC season, on two of the longest legs. The Miami defense fared no better against John Unitas and the Baltimore offense. The Colts rolled on to their fifth consecutive victory as they walloped Miami 35-0 and opened up a two-game lead over the second-place Dolphins in the AFC East. John Unitas is one of the best play callers in football. And in the first half of the season, innovative coach Don McCafferty always seemed to have a tricky new wrinkle ready for Unitas to call at the moment least expected. To open the second half of the season, McCafferty had prepared for the Green Bay Packers and another national television audience a few of the trickiest wrinkles of all. Jerry Hill slogged into the mud and muck of the Green Bay end zone, and the Colts were a winner for the sixth straight time. Back home against Buffalo, Rookie of the Year Dennis Shaw ran up a lead which had even the scoreboard blinking in disbelief. After resorting to some more tricky double dealing, the Colts finally tied the score in the third quarter on an end around to Eddie Hinton. But the game ended in a tie. The sixth-game winning streak was broken, and a period of frustration set in for the Colts. The frustration continued into the following week in Miami, where quarterback Bob Greasy passed and ran the Dolphins to a convincing victory. Back home again, the gloom continued. John Unitas got off to one of his roughest starts, as his old friends, the Chicago Bears, came up with 5 interceptions, 3 of them setting up scores in the first 7 minutes. But Unitas kept firing. A catch by Sam Haverlack set up 1 touchdown. A one-hand grab by Eddie Hinton set up another. And a Roy Jefferson stretch brought the Colts within 3. In the final minutes, Pro Football's all-time quarterback found John Mackey, Pro Football's all-time tight end, and 3 weeks of frustration had finally ended, 21-20. The next week, a 30-mile-per-hour wind ripped apart the Baltimore Dirt Bowl, but even this could not deter the Colts' 50th consecutive home sellout. The usual 60,000-plus watched the Philadelphia Eagles battle fruitlessly against the elements and the Colts' resourceful defense. Throwing to receivers he sometimes could barely see, John Unitas led the Colts to within 1 game of a division title. In Buffalo's War Memorial Stadium in the season's 13th week, John Unitas led the Colts across the tundra toward Miami. When Norm Boulash powered through the Bills and into the end zone for the winning touchdown, the Colts had their 10th victory 20-14, and were grateful to escape from Buffalo with the AFC's Eastern Division title. Returning hero John Unitas started the final game of the regular season, but this was to be Earl Morrall's day against his old tormentors, the New York Jets. In 3/4 of a game, Morrall passed for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a personally satisfying 35-20 victory. The leather-tough Colt defense, led by the animalistic stalking of middleman Mike Curtis, seemed even tougher against the Jets. When Ted Hendricks blocked a punt and recovered it for a touchdown, the Colts' victory was assured, and with it, an 11-2-1 record, best in the AFC. This victory seemed to symbolize the 10 victories which preceded it, for every part of the team functioned nearly to perfection and proved itself ultimately tuned for the final drive to the Super Bowl. The big play special teams, the tough-hitting defense, and the super resourceful offense. All season long, the big plays of the Colts special teams began with Jim Duncan, the top kickoff returner in pro football, and a man whose stilt-like leg action whipped extra excitement into every Colts game. And there were the stop-and-go punt returns of Ron Gardine, who skipped and darted over more ground than any other punt returner in the conference. And the tough-hitting Colt defense was anchored all season by the 6'7" frame of all-pro end Bubba Smith, and by his sidekick at tackle, Billy Ray Smith, playing his 12th and final pro season. At the other tackle was defensive captain Fred Miller, quick with the clamps on the enemy, as were defensive end Roy Hilton, and a pair of big, quick rookies, Jim Bailey and Billy Newsome. The linebackers all pursued to hit, every man a hitter. Mike Curtis, Bob Grant, Ray May, and the mad stork, Ted Hendricks, and the backs, every man a hitter, Jim Duncan, Charlie Stoops, Tom Maxwell, and all-conference safeties, Jerry Logan and Rick Volk. Every man a hitter, every man a resourceful scavenger, a defensive devourer with a voracious appetite for the ball or the man who holds it. The super resourceful Colt offense, without Tom Matty, had no proven runners to call upon. At times, number 17, Bucknell Sam Haverlack, was the man, but he is projected as a quarterback in the future. At times, number 34, former Detroit line Tom Nowatzki, was the man. He was not fast, but he was terribly persistent. Most often, number 36, young Norm Boulash, was the man. For once he recovered from his rookie nerves, he became the kind of pro runner who will slash his way over, around, or through just about any obstacle which dares to stand in his path. The foundations of any offense are the men who exchange their pain for their quarterback's peace of mind. Men like centers Curry and Gould, guards Wrestler, Williams, and Johnson, tackles Vogel, Sullivan, and Ball, A burly blocker and receiver like number 88, tight end John Mackey, is also a comfort to a quarterback. The Colts were blessed with two excellent tight ends. The other was number 84, rough and tumble Tom Mitchell. There were four excellent wide receivers. Number 28, Jimmy Orr. Number 27, Ray Perkins. And the Colts' new matched set of wide receivers, Roy Jefferson and Eddie Hinton. Together, they churned up more than 1,500 yards of spectacular offense. With a pair of receivers like Hinton and Jefferson and a pair of passers like Morrill and Unitas, the Colts rapidly became the highest-scoring team in their conference and the best prepared for the playoffs. On a cold and windy day after Christmas in Baltimore, the AFC's Eastern Division champion Baltimore Colts and their rookie coach were to begin their first postseason game since that black day in Miami 2 years before. They were finally to begin what they all had worked for, the playoffs, the chance to meet the red-hot Central Division champion Cincinnati Bengals of Paul Brown. Winners of 7 straight, but winners no more. The aggressive Colt defense shut out the Bengals, and Norm Boulash ate up the clock with 25 carries worth 116 yards, his best day as a pro. The Colts won 17-0 and earned the right to meet the Miracle Makers from Oakland in the AFC Championship game. Almost immediately, the high-powered Oakland attack felt the full pressure of the Colt defense. And almost immediately, the high-powered Oakland defense felt the full pressure of the Colt attack. Although at least 3 touchdowns just barely missed connections, there were enough completions to give the Raiders one of their worst days in years. John Unitas kept the Raiders off balance with his running game. Tom Nowatzki ran well, but usually his job was to clear the way for Norm Boulash. Baltimore defeated Oakland 27-17 and became the first champion of the American Football Conference. On January 17, 1971, there came into Miami's Orange Bowl a team which the nation had counted out in the season's second week, a team which had defied the experts. The Baltimore Colts had returned to the Super Bowl. At first, John Unitas had bad luck against the Dallas defense. And then his luck changed. But finally, Dallas crushed Unitas with a doomsday blow to the midsection. Earl Morrall took over at quarterback and immediately began to move the ball against the Cowboys. Behind by 7 points, the Colts' crazy quilt offense moved up and down the field, but was unable to score the tying touchdown. Finally, a fourth-quarter Craig Morton pass was deflected to Rick Volk, who set up a tie at 13-13. But it was what followed that decided the game.
Dallas, a second down, 35 yards to go. Morton being chased by Bubba Smith. Intercepted by Mike Curtis. Mike Curtis intercepts, and Baltimore has a chance now to win it. Baltimore has the ball on the Dallas 28. Here comes O'Brien. 9 seconds. Young Jim O'Brien, a rookie. And the kick is up. The kick is good. Jim O'Brien with 5 seconds.
Jim O'Brien, with 5 seconds left, ended the pro season the same way he had begun it, as a hero. He was a hero and will always be, but he was only one among many who made their team the world champion Baltimore Colts.